Hey, good morning. Good morning, good morning. Everybody's fast today. Get your coffee. We're going to be talking. So, is this the most fun you've ever had watching a presidential election? I mean, seriously, this is good stuff. Could not be more entertained. Aren't you going to be bored? Imagine watching the news a year from now. Can you even imagine that? A year from now, you turn on the news and it's just like, somebody died, somebody killed somebody, something blew up. You don't want that. You want this election to go on forever. Well, good morning. Let me get my coffee done here and I'll come over and tell you what's happening. Everybody see my blog post for this morning? I just posted it. It is pure entertainment. That's all they have left. Yeah, I wonder if Trump did get elected, would it be interesting, or would he just go into work mode and we don't see him any more than we see any other president? How do I like my coffee? I like it fine. You're probably asking if I put cream and sugar in it. The answer is not with my own coffee maker, but I take cream if I'm at a restaurant usually. All right, so let me talk about what I wrote in my blog today, so you don't have to read it. I mean, I'd like it if you did, but you don't have to. So I was giving a persuasion score to Clinton's speech about the alt-right and painting Trump as a racist versus Trump's speech where he called her a bigot. I'm not alt-right, in case you're wondering, but I know a lot of them. A lot of them are my friends, and I got to say they're all different. There aren't two of them who are the same person or have the same views. So it's an interesting category. It's basically a category of miscellaneous people that, Clinton doesn't like. Yeah, so as I tweeted this morning, we've managed to, the United States in all its glory, has managed to narrow the search for our leader down to two 70-year-old racists. That's the best we had, and 320 fucking million people. Two 70-year-old racists. Or maybe a racist and a bigot, if you prefer. Now, that assumes both of them are right in all their accusations, but, I think the reality is that neither of them are that. So I scored Clinton as the big winner for the news cycle yesterday. So on the persuasion scale, what she did was perfect persuasion, very effective, and for any normal candidate, it would be a total kill shot. No other candidate would be able to crawl out from under the rubble that she put Trump under with all that alt-right laundry list of allegations. Now, what makes the allegations so effective has nothing to do with the facts of them, because all the facts are taken out of context or misleading or just plain wrong. If you look down at any of the individual accusations against Trump, they're either, in one case he's trying to bias the judge in favor of him, which is really all he was doing. In another case, he's trying to make the country more secure. So you can go right down the list, and all of his actions have a non-racist explanation that's better than the racist one. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that Clinton had lots of fodder. She had lots of examples of these slightly out of context things that together form this mosaic that you say, my God, if there's that much smoke, there must be fire. Now, that's what confirmation bias gets you, is that once you've labeled somebody, then the confirmation bias starts, and people start interpreting everything else as fitting that label. So as a persuasion technique, brilliant, very effective, and almost nobody could climb out of that. I mean, she really She buried him yesterday and all this week. But Clinton totally won yesterday. Trump tried to respond by calling her a bigot, which is gutsy and brilliant on a lot of levels because it's very quotable. It confuses maybe some dumb people, but it's not terribly persuasive because people have already made up their minds about whether or not one of them is a racist or not. And I don't think so. While Clinton could successfully, reinforce the things people were already worried about Trump, Clinton just doesn't have a racist resume. So, branding her at this late point is an interesting way to, draw energy toward Trump and, add some confusion a little bit, but not terribly persuasive, right? Nobody's going to say, you're right, Trump's the non-racist, Clinton is the bigot. So that sale will not be made. But Trump had a couple other approaches that he's apparently testing out to see if they work, and they might have more potential than the bigot claim. So one of his approaches I tweeted about is to say, effectively, I'm paraphrasing, that's all they have left. So by the time, you've emptied your magazine shooting at the monster and it hasn't slowed it down, the last thing you do is you throw your empty gun at the monster. And so when Trump says that's all they have left, he's kind of evoking that. It's like, okay, that's all they got. If all they have is making up stories, I win. So that's pretty good. It's not enough by itself. It's not a great persuasion kill shot or anything else. But here's the part that I think has more legs. And Trump made a reference to it in his speech, but I think it's stronger than you might imagine. And that is that Trump has built a brand around only insulting or being against people who are not Americans. So if you're here illegally, in his view, he's got a problem. If you're trying to get in the country to blow us up, he has a problem. If you're trying to negotiate bad trade agreements, he has a problem. So in all cases, he's been consistently pro-American. And when he's gone after people, he's gone after professionals, people who are in the cage match with him, right? So if he goes after the media, they're professionals, other politicians on both sides. He's insulted his own party even more than the Democrats. They're all professionals. So, that's a different category. But as Trump noted in Clinton's speech, she went after citizens. She basically called Trump's supporters racists. Now, Trump cleverly is broadening the accusation from what she said was these alt-right people have too many racists in them, in the group. Trump cleverly sort of amplified that to say, are you saying all of these people are racist? Which is good. That's good persuasion. Because it highlights the fact that Trump has been on the American team against outsiders, and you can argue whether that's a good or bad idea. I'm not making that argument today. Today, all I'm saying is that's how he branded himself. And successfully, I would say. He branded himself as, I'm on Team America, I'm going to fight for your team, the other team is the other team, and we're going to try to beat that team. Clinton, being more of a globalist, more of an inclusive kind of approach, literally went after Americans, and lots of them. The number of people who support Trump is, 40% of the country or something. So when someone who's going to be a leader of the country comes after American citizens with a pretty hard insult, that looks bordering on treason, all right? Now, the point of the President of the United States is to protect Americans over the interests of other people. Clinton has put her own interests and the interests of people who are not citizens, who would like to become citizens, over the interest of 40% of her own citizens. How the hell does Trump let that go? All right. And again, people who are just joining might not know that I don't agree with the politics of either side. I'm not going to vote, and I've endorsed Clinton, but that's primarily for my physical safety because I live in California. Breitbart ran with calls all, yeah. So Breitbart got it right in terms of persuasion. Trump has started talking about amnesty. All right, so let me take a moment to talk about the people who got it right. All right, so remember last year there were only a few pundits who said that Trump is going to go all the way. I was one of them. Ann Coulter was one, and there were some other people who had Ann Coulter-like arguments. And their argument was he'll go all the way because he's got the right policies. And usually what they meant is immigration policy that they liked. I said from the beginning, policies are irrelevant, and he will succeed because he is the best persuader. Now that we've gotten to the final lap of the race, and Trump has softened his immigration approach, as I had predicted back in September or something last year. I said there's no way, there is no way that Trump will stay with deporting 11 million people. That by the election day, that will change, and so it did. So I would like to submit that if Trump gets elected, which is still my prediction, and in a landslide, that I will be the only pundit who got it right for the right reasons. So there are plenty of people who said he has the best policies, therefore he'll win. So if he wins, those people are going to say, "See, I told you so. He had the right policies." But you got a problem there because he changed his policies halfway through, right? If you think he was going to win because of his policies, and then he won on completely different policies, which is sort of what's happening right now, I don't think you can say you predicted it. Can you? I think only somebody who said it doesn't matter what his policies are can legitimately say, "I told you so." Now, of course, if he loses, then I'm just one of the people who got it wrong, right? I mean, I'll try to take some credit for the success he's gotten so far. But I think people could say, well, he's gotten this far because of his hardcore immigration policies. That's what got him nominated. But he can't win the general election that way. The one they were most emotionally attached to. Yeah, people did choose the emotional topics, but Trump could have made any topic emotional if he tried hard enough. It was all about immigration. That's not what most of the world thinks, but there definitely are a lot of people who think immigration was the whole thing. Would you bet money on Trump? Do you think I haven't? That doesn't mean I'll bet money with every person who wants to bet, which would be impractical. Hillary equals war is a better argument? I don't know. So the trouble is that even though that's on the logical level, the Clinton will create more wars argument, I think has a good logical connection. You could say that the people who take the most money from the defense industry, which is her, this year, are more likely to want to use weapons, blah, blah. But I don't think it's persuasive because it's a little too intellectual. It's like, here's a dot, here's a dot, here's a dot. Try to connect all the dots. There's no visual to it. So it's a tough sell. I don't think Kanye is going to go all the way. I had said that he has master persuader skills, and that's still true. But I think he's got more issues. He may have some emotional, mental issues. I don't want to diagnose him from afar, but I don't know if he's got the personality that can go this far. Is betting money on elections illegal? Probably. No, the racist MO is still good. Yeah, I think you can degrade it a little bit by mocking it and saying, I've pointed out in my blog that we've seen a complete reversal or attempted reversal in brand. The reversal is that, a few months ago you said, Trump is the one who never talks about policies. All he can do is insult people. That's all he's got. He's just a bunch of insults. And then we watch in the last week, and we see that Clinton is essentially running a campaign on nothing but insults. He's a racist, he's a racist, he's a racist, he's a racist, he's a sexist, he's a racist, he's a sexist. And she does have lots of policies, but both of them do. You can go to their websites, and sure enough, there's policies there. Neither of them are going to implement those policies, so it doesn't matter too much what the details are, because the details would be changed by Congress, even if they got as far as getting it to debate. People are sick of being called a racist and sexist. Yes, they are. I think the Czech immigrant models are going to be fine. If you bet an election, can you be biased? Well, if you predict an election, you're going to be biased. So I'm already biased in that sense. When people ask me all the time, how do you check for your own bias? And the answer is you can't completely, because that's what bias is. Bias is the thing you don't know you're biased about. Like, if you knew you were biased, you would stop doing it. So by definition, you can't remove all of your bias. It's the thing you can't see. But there's some things you can do proactively, like not voting, not joining a political party. Those are definitely going to help down the road. So I do those things. But as the commenter noted, if you bet on the election, or if you make a public prediction about the election, that hardens you to a side and should, in theory, create bias. So, yes. Will I have coffee with you after the election? Well, definitely the day after the election. Yeah, I'll have a lot of coffee with you the day after the election. Lunch with Scott Adams. Who wants lunch with me? That's a lot of questions. How in the world can I read all those? There's a clue in the People magazine. Crossword, right? What are you humming? Years ago somebody mentioned that I sometimes unconsciously hum, which apparently I just did then. I'm not really aware of it. I just go, and I don't know why. Sales tips for cold calling. Well, I wouldn't give them to you if I had them. I'm not a big fan of cold calling. How can click walk out of the first debate? It's a calming, soothing mechanism? Probably is. I think it's just a space filler. The health question, why doesn't it have more traction? I think the health question doesn't have more traction because, first of all, they're both about the same age. And secondly, when Clinton is in public, she looks pretty peppy. The health hypothesis, the one that I've made, is that her variability in appearance is quite extreme, which is an indication that there's something going on that changes, either medications or hormones or health in general. Trump, however, looks exactly like Trump, acts exactly like Trump, no matter what. And his energy is high, and he has lots of appearances and a busy schedule. And so there are fewer clues that he might have any kind of a health problem. Now, Clinton's alleged health problems are based partly on facts of her past and partly on observation. But I guess there's not enough bite on that to make it as persuasive as it should be. Although I would argue it probably is persuading people. We just don't know it. Have you seen I heard from an insider that the Dr. Drew show was, that the decision had already been made to end the Dr. Drew show. How long can she get away with her evasiveness? I got a question for you. I don't totally understand why Clinton doesn't want to do press conferences. Yet she'll do individual interviews. Because an individual interview, the interviewer will push back just as they would in a press conference. Now, I suppose there's more variables in a wild press conference. You don't get the time to fully explain yourself. Things can be taken out of context. So if you're ahead, I suppose you'd want to milk your lead and do as little as possible and just try to stay ahead. But do you think there's more to it? She's not spontaneous. But that's not true, because she does interviews one-on-one, and she does great. I mean, if you watch any of her one-on-one interviews, have you ever seen anything that would make you feel that she doesn't have that totally under control? I mean, she's one of the better interviewers. I mean, she always has something to say. You don't see a lot of mistakes. I mean, actually, think about it. When was the last time you heard like a real gaffe from Hillary Clinton? Like the ones that they play are from like decades ago. She's really good at that. So if you're that good at one-on-one interviews, and you do lots of them, and it's sort of your job to do interviews with the press, I don't exactly know what's up with the press conference thing. All right? Especially because it's becoming a thing. All you'd have to do is do one, and then the counter stops, right? So everybody's saying, it's 265 days since the last press conference. Just do one. They have to, stop using their counter. There's no way she can't handle a press conference. There's no way that she doesn't have the mental dexterity, the command of the facts, the experience to handle that easily. No way. Unless there's something going on that we don't know about. So, and by the way, this is a perfect example of confirmation bias. Since I already believe she has some health issues, I look at the subject of not doing press conferences as more likely than not associated with that fact, or that presumed fact. But I don't have any evidence of that, right? If you said, what is your evidence that the reason she's not doing press conferences is because there's some kind of a mental or health problem, and the answer is I have no facts. But I still kind of think it's probably true. But I'm also aware that it's probably confirmation bias, because I've already decided, just based on looking at her and the way she acts and moves, that she has a little bit of a health issue. Not a little bit, a big health issue. And by the way, the genesis of that prediction is not related to any of the other stuff you're seeing on social media. It has nothing to do with her head bobbing or needing stools or any of that. Those things raise questions. I think they're good questions to get answers to. But my prediction of her health problem is based on the following. It's based on the fact that I'm a trained hypnotist, and one of the things you learn as a hypnotist is watching people more closely than people normally do. In other words, you're looking for very small changes in their appearance, their breathing, their skin tone, their muscle tone, their posture, all those things. And what I notice in Clinton is a lot of variability. And that variability speaks to something in her physical nature that changes on a regular basis. And Trump doesn't have that variability. And even when people have variability, usually it's, they're angry today or they're tired today. That's a normal variability. But you'll see in Clinton just a bigger, sort of all over the board variability. Made you notice. Good. Why'd she mention Putin? I don't know. I mean, obviously, tying Trump to Putin sounds like a good idea. Which one of Trump's linguistic kill shots has been most effective? Well, if you mean the entire race, the low energy was the most effective. How many of you think that Clinton is anti-white male? That's a real question, by the way. How many think Clinton is anti-white male? Yeah, I do. No? Some of you really believe no, right? Yes, yes, yes. Nope, nope. Is the nope all the same person? It's all that brown. I think there's just one person who said no several times. Good Lord. I realized I had a lot of conservatives on this Periscope, but really? See, that's funny. The thing that Trump didn't do, and I thought he was going there, is when he said she was a bigot, he tried to turn that into an argument that her policies, or Democratic policies, are not good for the African American community. And that's sort of the milquetoast, too big of a stretch, trying too hard to be logical, completely non-persuasive thing that just seemed out of character for Trump. But, and I realize this is like political dynamite, so maybe he was smart to stay away from it. But this is also good persuasion. When you try to label somebody with a label that might not be true, but it plays to the bias that people already have, then that label is going to stick. That's why accusations of racism stick with Trump. It's because you had this vague bad feeling about his strongman personality, and then when you heard the label, you thought, oh, confirmation bias. I'll just put all these pieces of non-evidence together and look at all the non-evidence I have. If you get enough non-evidence, it looks like evidence. But Trump could have gone at it directly. He could have said directly, she's a bigot against white men. Because that's what the alt-right is, mostly. It's mostly white men. Tim Kaine is an alpha male? Tim Kaine is an alpha male? The alpha male who was a cheerleader in college. Just saying. Do you think you could beat Godzilla if you join Trump's team? Too many variables in that. And some gorgeous white girls. Yeah, I think the lawsuit 40 years ago about discrimination, I think even if you're a Trump supporter, you should probably take that seriously. But I think it's also true that everybody who's 70 was a racist 40 years ago. Pretty much all of them. Doesn't matter what color you are. Doesn't matter what gender you are. If you're 70 years old, 40 years ago, you were a piece of shit. That's just the facts. I'll say it again because I liked it. If you're 70 years old, 40 years ago, you were a piece of shit. Because our standards of what is acceptable today is completely different than then. And I suppose you could say it was never acceptable then, but it was normal then. In other words, people could say out loud and do things that you just would not do today. So I think the test there should be, if you're talking about a 70-year-old, have they improved? If they've improved, what else are you asking, right? Is there anything else you can ask if somebody has demonstrably improved to your position and, took them decades to get there, so you don't have to wonder if it was some, convenient flip just to get out of trouble? Yeah, I think you give everybody a pass for anything they did 40 years ago if you're not seeing any evidence of that recently, all right? If people were terrible 40 years ago, that was pretty normal. But if you didn't get any better, that's a problem. You think piece of shit is too harsh? Well, it was hyperbole. Every 70-year-old white guy is telling a little bit of racist jokes in private. It's just sort of what they did. Has your gut feeling ever contradicted your mind? Sure, all the time. That doesn't mean the gut feeling was right. Yeah, and if I'm being fair, I'm trying to be a little bit objective here. I know I say too much about Trump's powers of persuasion, but the accusation of Clinton saying that he wanted to bring the super predators to heel, and the accusation that therefore she's racist, again, complete bullshit. All right, and honestly, if you're trying to win the election, the more you focus on ridiculous stuff like that, the less credible you become. Now, it would be a totally good attack if, like in Trump's case, you could string together a whole bunch of those ridiculous things. So the fact that one time she once said something about super predators, which really was not even a racial comment, it just coincidentally the super predators, a lot of them happen to be African American. So anyway, unless Clinton has lots of other sketchy behavior in her past, clinging to that one thing she said a long time ago that wasn't really even particularly racist is just weak sauce. Yeah, the campaign, the KKK gave her a campaign. Is that it? There's got to be KKK on both sides, don't you think? Claiming Trump causes school bullying. That's probably true. But don't you think both sides have caused school bullying, just in different ways? Everybody's a racist. Here's why. I wrote about this in the blog today too. The normal human brain is a pattern recognition machine. It looks for patterns and then it operates on them. But a lot of those patterns are wrong. You just got too little information, or you got the wrong information. And so you form patterns all day long that aren't real. I'm not even sure the percentage of how many patterns you see that you imagine are real actually are. My guess is, I think most people would assume most patterns that they recognize are real, and okay, some of them are not. The persuasion viewpoint is the opposite. That most of the patterns you think are real are not. It's only once in a while that they're real. So the normal human brain is biased and bigoted pretty much all the time. The only thing that separates people is the degree to which they're willing and able to try to overcome those biases by overlaying some either social programming or some, math common sense. So, for example, if you had a bias that said all Albanians are thieves, and you were going to hire an Albanian, you might look at the stats and say, oh, it turns out that only X percent of them are dangerous criminals. So I will try to see past that and look at this one Albanian individually, look at this person's background and interview and resume and make a judgment. So if you can do all that, at least you haven't discriminated. At least you haven't done it intentionally. You haven't discriminated intentionally. But you're still a bigot because you had those thoughts. You're still a racist because you had those thoughts. But you're not discriminating. And I would argue that's about as good as a normal human brain can do. Because if you convince yourself that all the patterns you see are false, you sort of can't operate, right? You can't go to work. You can't do anything because we're just pattern recognition machines. We say things worked like this last time, so probably they'll work like that again. If you don't do that, you don't have a functioning human brain, right? So it is stupid and impractical to imagine that we could be less biased, less racist in our private thinking, because that's just pattern recognition that we do wrong most of the time. But apparently, some people can either consciously or unconsciously use social programming to get past that for a variety of beneficial reasons for society and for their own well-being. And you can use what small bit of rational thought you have to look past it and say, I don't want to overlook the best job candidate just because some percentage of the group they're in has bad behavior. So if you can do that, that's as good as you can get, my friends, because you can't erase pattern recognition from your faulty brain. Did you figure out what alt-right means? Yeah, I finally did. What it is a grab bag of unrelated thoughts that happen to come out of some people who have some similar genetic characteristics. So, I'm totally uninterested in Farage because I think he came and he went and he's irrelevant to anything. No, I have no comment on Nigel Farage. He's irrelevant to everything. Mistakes say Alex Jones and Milo. What about them? Is the attention Alex Jones getting good for him? Probably, because he runs on attention. Why do the impact of scandals get so low? Because there's so many of them. Is Alex Jones the greatest entertainer of our time? Do you keep asking that because you want me to say that so you can quote me? I think I've seen about 30 seconds of Alex Jones in my lifetime, so I don't have an opinion. The super predator thing is not persuasive because it does not fit a pattern of confirmation bias that you already have in your mind about Clinton. Because people don't really see her as a racist. And so, one bit of information that sort of almost reminds you of maybe a little bit of a racist isn't enough. If there were lots of those things, then it would be. Was Hillary's attack on Putin good? I think all the Putin stuff is shooting blanks. Yeah, I talked about the alt-right speech again, so I won't go over that on this. But check out my blog at dilber.com, and I talk all about the alt-right speech. I just posted that. All right, I got to run. I got to answer a message that just came in that's time sensitive. So I'll see all you people soon.